Most of us have heard guys say that one of the main reasons they want to go and retire in the Philippines is because it's a much simpler life with less stress, which of course is good for one's mental health. But anyone who's visited the Philippines enough will realise that there can be many frustrations for some foreign guys who go and live in the Philippines, with many of these returning after a few years to their home country. So clearly there's two sides to this story, but in the end it'll come down to each person as to whether moving to the Philippines will be good or not for your life and for your mental health. Now I must tell you that I've seen men from different countries move to the Philippines on a whim and without any real planning. Many of these guys have very little savings and they have some idea in their head that the Philippines is so cheap that they won't need much money to survive. Whilst it's true that the cost of living is cheaper than in many countries, you'll also be surprised just how quickly a foreign guy can go through his money, especially if he's trying to live a Western lifestyle in the Philippines. With these guys who go there on a whim with very little money, I do suspect many of them have some sort of mental illness already, which is affecting their decision making. I used to work with clients who had mental health conditions, and it was common for these people just to move from one location to another, sometimes thousands of kilometres apart, with no planning or way to survive at all. Ultimately, many of these clients would call me after they hit rock bottom for help to get back home. I now look at some guys who do similar, but instead of moving around their own country, they venture to the Philippines. The problem is when they hit rock bottom there, they have no one who can assist them. Often they may ask their embassy for assistance, who will tell them that they can't help them. And this is where we can see foreign men who are homeless and begging on the streets in Manila. So what happens to these guys in the end? Well, who really knows, but unless they can find a way to get home, their chances of survival in such a country are not good. Now on the other side of the coin, I'm a firm believer that if done correctly and one is of sound mind, then a move to the Philippines can improve one's mental health simply by creating that more peaceful and relaxing lifestyle with far less stress. In fact, I've seen many men make such a successful move, usually in retirement, and they've been very happy for many years. It really comes down to your mindset and expectations about the country and what sort of lifestyle will make you happy. Then consider if you have the money to fund that type of lifestyle until you pass away, whenever that may be. Obviously, the more money you have, then the better off that you'll be. Many guys go there with rather little savings and are drawing a fortnightly or monthly pension from their country. Now this will supply them, in most cases, with enough for a basic to moderate lifestyle in the Philippines. If such guys are comfortable and happy to live that sort of lifestyle, which would most likely be in province areas, then all good and well. But if you decide to do this solely on a pension, you must know that you'll be living the same way the rest of your life, and at some point it can start to become a bit too hard or frustrating. For me, if I was to go and retire in the Philippines, I'd want to have a safety net, not just in savings for emergencies, but also in a form of regular income apart from any pension that I may be drawing. This would allow me to live a reasonable lifestyle which would be a mix of local and Western, and it would allow me to still travel around the Philippines to explore that wonderful country without worrying too much about my money. I certainly believe that when one retires, he must still have some sort of interest or interests rather than just sitting at home doing nothing day after day, because that's when things like depression can kick in and life becomes a whole lot darker. Everyone who moves to the Philippines will each find what that interest may be in order to feel as though they're continuing to lead a productive life as they get older, and I think that's the same no matter where you are in the world. If we stop and do nothing and have no interests, then what's the point of life and what's the point of retiring in a foreign country? Have we retired there solely because our money goes a little bit further than it would back home? And perhaps, as a result, we end up not really enjoying living in the Philippines. Now, I don't really know the answer here because I can't speak for every person, but what I do see is some expats who've been there for some years become what I call very jaded and even bitter towards the Philippines. I suspect for many such men, their plans or dreams of retirement haven't really panned out the way they originally expected. Perhaps these guys have no interest to keep things fresh and for them to feel alive. Or possibly they only have a small pension to live on, and now the cost of living is getting more expensive in the Philippines, they're noticing just how their money isn't going as far, so they're tightening their belt, which can cause them stress around financial worry. As I said, I have no doubts that for the right people, the Philippines can be a wonderful way to retire and can vastly improve your mental health. But equally, if you haven't planned properly or have a good amount of finances, you can be left rather disillusioned and even bitter. Not to mention, it can affect your mental health as we discussed. So if you're considering the possibility of moving or retiring to the Philippines in the future, then be sure to research all you can, make sure you have the finances, and if on a pension, look at what other income you may be able to create to give you that extra buffer, which of course can also provide an interest for you. I've heard of many guys who will first take a vacation to the Philippines for 3 to 6 months to get a feel for the country and the different cities and provinces to see if they're suited before fully committing to such a move. To me, that's a very smart idea, and I find that most guys who do such a thing remain very happily retired in the Philippines for many years. So I hope this video has given you some things to consider, as that's the goal for all my videos on this channel. Any guys out there who are planning to retire in the Philippines, I'd love to hear what your retirement plans are around savings, pensions, income, and interest that you may have when there. So be sure to pop your comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.